Hi, welcome to the Nøbodies Project. This is where I interview artists across all different mediums about their creative process, how they started, maybe where they're going, maybe their favorite project, maybe their least favorite project, their biggest rut, how they stay creative. And bigger than that, this is a community. So we want you to be involved. We want you to submit your artwork to us, and you can do that at submit@thenobodiesproject.com. You can send us an email, and we promise to give you honest, real feedback because we think everybody deserves it. And that feedback isn't just going to come from us at the Nøbodies Project. It's also going to come from the featured artists that you see on our website and in this episode. Speaking of this episode, this week we have Amani. She is a hilarious comedian who I had the pleasure of seeing at Telltale, another featured artist project, and she blew me away with not only her jokes, but her stage presence. She is absolutely delightful, and it definitely comes through in this podcast, and I hope you enjoy listening to it as much as I enjoy talking to her. We have Amani today.
Yeah.
And she's a comedian, but I'm going to let her talk more about it. I always like to ask the first question is, what do you do for money? And then what do you do for art?
Okay. For money, I work at a nonprofit called Sabin CDC. It's actually not very far from here on Alberta. And it does low-income housing and affordable housing and development for those things as well. So we have two projects. I know exactly
where that is. That in between Vancouver and...
It's right on 15th in Alberta.
Oh, okay.
So it's right on that corner.
Oh, yeah, okay.
But we have a couple developments that we're doing right now that should be done by the end of the year. So having to work with developing 2 new apartment complexes and leasing them, that's going to be a fun project for me over the summer. So it's going to be a lot of comedy and a lot of...
stress?
Yeah. Work stress as well.
Oh, yeah, all the stress. So what about art? I mean, I could talk to you about the nonprofit. That's great. But we're here to talk more about,
For art, I mean, I do comedy. That would be my art, using my words to tell stories.
How do you view comedy in the sense of, like, is it your art or is it, like, a fun thing you do? Or, like, what's your mindset around, like, your comedy right now?
I don't know. Like, I find my comedy to be kind of artistic just because it's, like, storytelling with comedy, like with laughter, with the main purpose to make people laugh.
Yeah.
Hopefully. But I kind of see it as art because you have to be like, art is a lot of it's like analytical, it's purposeful, it's like you're doing everything meticulous to make sure it's right. It's the same thing we do with comedy. Is like we have a specific amount of time that we're given, and we have to, like, well, I don't, but I know people do, time out their jokes.
Really?
So that they know what jokes to tell when, because they know how long that joke takes to tell. I haven't gotten to that part of, like, analyzing my jokes, but, like, that's a bit of, like, the creative process where you're just, like, trying to make a set list that works the best for your time. I had to do that yesterday at a show where I had to make the best set list, and turns out I didn't write enough. So I was just like, darn, I have more time. But I was able to use another joke from somewhere else in a different set.
You mentioned being, like, analytical, like, on point and everything like that. So are you somebody who, for your jokes, it's written down, you know how to perform it? Or, because one of my favorite comedians, Rory Scovel, he does a lot of just, like, straight up improv, like, not improv, but completely improvised sets. Mm-hmm. How are you in terms of, like, your joke writing? Are you, like, meticulously, like, this is the line, and then you'll adjust as you go? Or are you like, whatever happens, I'll just go up and riff?
Well, like, for example, yesterday I did a show, and I kind of split all my jokes into, like, topics of what they're about. Like, I have all of these jokes in my, like, inventory that are all about race, and all of them that are all about drugs, and all of them that are all about sex, and all of them that are about my family. Like, I do that, and sometimes I don't have enough in my inventory, so they have to blend in some way. But, like, yesterday, I just, like, write down maybe the first sentence or what that joke is about, or what that punchline is about, so that I have them in order.
Okay.
I think I had like 13 bullet points that go through.
So your bullet points, you don't need the whole joke ring.
Yeah. Okay. Well, sometimes like when it's new, I write it down verbatim, like exactly the way it needs to be said. And like if it's a new tag or a new punchline that I've been working on, I will write it all the way out, just so that like until it's in my brain where I can look at 2 words and know an entire joke from looking at 2 words. And there's a few jokes I have where I can just write 2 things down and know the entire joke.
And you'll just, when you're on stage, you'll just be like looking at it, okay, cool, I got it.
That's what I want to get to for everything. It's just I can put 2 words down, and then I'll know the entire joke. Yeah.
So your whole set list is a little sticky note.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In terms of your writing, are you somebody who will remember something? I mean, probably not, because a lot of people aren't. Or middle of the night, you come up with a joke, and you're like, all right, I got to get up and I got to write this down.
Gosh, I am definitely not like that. Although one time I was in my shower and I thought of something, and my phone was on the counter, so I like got out the shower, grabbed my phone, texting it to myself in the shower, or putting it in my notes in the shower. But a lot of times, if I'm out and about, because that's typically where I think about jokes, is when I'm just like out with friends or walking around. Or I hear someone say something that's funny to me, and I mean, like, they're not going to do anything with it, so I'm like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and take this idea, and I tweet it. That was, like, the very first thing. Even before I did comedy, I would just tweet what I heard people say around to me.
I love those.
And just see if it got likes. I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe this can spawn into something else.
So that was before comedy?
That was before comedy.
So
and
did
now
you retroactively go back and you're like, are there bits in here?
Yes, actually. I have in my bookmarks, I have a lot of my own tweets from like years ago.
You feel a little conceited, but you're like, nah, it's worth it. Don't worry.
That was funny. Like, actually, that has legs. I guess I'll use that sometime.
Nice. So in terms of, are you somebody who's, it's all inspiration based instead of, because I watch a ton of comedians and a lot of podcasts, and some of them are like, all right, every day I sit down and I write for an hour. And I'm like, how? Like, I
have my job.
Yeah, exactly.
I have to wake up at 8 to get to work at 9 and work for 9 hours. So I'm like, I'm
not going home and being like, well, now is my writing time.
Exactly. And then I leave to go to an open mic. So most of my writing time actually happens at the venue or at an open mic, or even at a show I write.
Okay, I was going to say, because the last show I saw you at, it was at, where was it? I filmed Brent there.
Fourth Wall?
Yes, Fourth Wall. I noticed, I like looked over and I noticed you like furiously scribbling. Like, it was like, I hope that's just like her set list. But yeah, that's interesting. That's like at a show.
Yeah, it's just like, I don't know, it's been that way since I started doing comedies, because I just never, well, I used to take the bus. I didn't used to have a car, so it would take me like an hour to get into downtown Portland, because I lived in Hillsborough initially. Then I moved to Southwest Portland. It'd still take like 30 minutes or so to get to downtown Portland. So I would either write on the bus, or like the bus would get me there early. Otherwise, I would get there late with the schedule. So I'd be at the venue just writing down my jokes before even anyone got there. So that like,
it's kind of a blessing in that way, because I had to take the bus when I was in college because I didn't have a car, and I honestly learned to really love the bus, because you can read, or I did a bunch of writing as well, where like putting yourself in those situations, it almost forces you to do it, or you're like, you either look at Instagram.
Yeah, it's like either you look at Instagram
productive,
or like, I mean, I did go through a ton of albums at that time, like listening to rap music or whatever. Yeah. I'm like, oh yeah, I heard the entire like Kendrick Lamar album on the bus.
Nice. So you're pretty new to comedy. How long have you been doing comedy? Give me like your origins.
I first started in 2019, September of 2019.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that was super smooth going right into 2020.
Yeah, it was a strange time. Like I had a good set, but I think I was just so nervous about it. Like I didn't know anyone. I was already going by myself. Like for 5 months prior to me ever going on stage, I just went and watched people do stand-up. Like I would go to open mics.
That's the stage I'm at right now, where I'm just going to watch people. But now I'm using the excuse of like, I'll film you, so I'll be like part of it. Yeah.
Like for me, I was just watching. I got to know well, not know them personally, but like, I do know them now. But like Jaron, for example, like I used to watch him, and I was like kind of obsessed with how funny he was. I followed him on social media.
Rightfully
like,
so. Yeah.
He didn't know who I was, but I was like stalking him.
A little super fan.
Yeah, a little super fan. And then I did my first ever set, and it went really well. Jaron was actually the host of the open mic when I did my set, and he riffed off of my joke, which meant to me that it was good. If a comedian has something to say that's funny after you say your whole spiel, I'm like, okay, I told some good jokes. And I just never went again. And I think I just stopped going.
So it went great, and you're like, check, stand up, done.
Yeah, basically. I think I didn't go back until like January of 2020.
And the first time was? In the summer or something like that?
Well, like, the first time I went back was January 2020, and then I think the last time I went up was like February, like 28th or something towards the end of February. And I was like, I moved to Southeast Portland at that time, so I was like, I'm in the comedy hub. Everything is in Southeast Portland, comic-wise. And then the pandemic happened, and I had like nothing. I just was like, wow, the whole purpose of me moving to this area was to do comedy, and I can't do comedy.
Yeah, how was the pandemic for comedians and everything like that? I mean, I know it was a nightmare.
It was a nightmare. I think that, like, for me, I kind of took advantage of it. Actually, like, on my Instagram, I actually have 2, like, long videos of me doing, like, stand-up comedy in my bedroom.
I love that.
I'm like just sitting on the carpet in my room.
Like not Zoom, just recording yourself.
Yeah, just recording myself going through a set. No laughter, you know.
Oh, you didn't just cueing laughter?
I know, I should have just had like a little space bar with a laugh track. But no laughter, just kind of talking to myself, and it went well to me anyway.
What was more intimidating or scary, the first time going up or recording yourself in your apartment with no laughter?
Well, I think it was the first time going up because I wanted to be a YouTuber when I was like in high school. I was really into like YouTube. I watched tons of YouTubers, and I was like, I think I could do this. I think I could be a YouTuber. So when I came to filming myself do like a set, I kind of felt okay because I was just like, I'm used to just talking to myself.
Have you done the YouTube thing before?
Yeah. It's kind of an embarrassing embarrassment, if you will, of going onto my YouTube channel and watching old videos.
We'll plug it. We'll watch the whole thing.
They're still up. A lot of those videos are still up. I used to kind of like do a shuffle of all the music I liked and like lip sync or dance to it.
And this was pre-TikTok.
Yeah, pre-TikTok.
So they stole your ideas.
They definitely did. They stole my idea of lip syncing to songs.
Interesting. So what led you to like try and stand up in the first place? Was that something that you've always liked, or friends dared you? But you said you went alone.
I did go alone. So it's an interesting story. I liked stand-up comedy before, but I was never thinking about it until I dated this rapper, and he was obviously doing music, and he was like, I think you're really funny. We like met on Twitter, so he was like, I think you're really funny, you should do stand-up. And I didn't until we stopped talking, and then I was just like,
like, I'm not giving you credit.
I know, I was like, I'm not giving you credit for this, but like the moment we stopped like communicating, I was like, I'm gonna do stand-up now. And so I just went for 5 months before I actually did it. But now it's going great versus how it went before. I hope that's not my fault.
That's fine. Don't worry about it. There'll be worse technical issues today, for sure. But how was your first set? And like, did you write everything out? Like, did you have like rehearsing your type 5?
I still have it. I still have my entire first set written down in like one of my notebooks. I wrote it verbatim, word for word. I don't even use all of those jokes anymore, but I still, a lot of them I still, it was a couple years ago, and it was like relevant to how I felt at that time. Yeah. But I still use some of those jokes because they're still like funny. They still work. So that's part of the reason you still use them.
How was the reception on your first Like you went up, like, did you get laughs or what?
Yeah,
did you bomb? Like you said, you did pretty well.
I did pretty well. It's funny. It was at Kelly's Olympian.
Yeah.
And I have never had a set like the first set I had. And it doesn't even matter if it's like a real show. I have never had
like as well as
a set as I had my first time there.
Oh man.
Like I thought it was pretty good the first time.
That's funny. Like I feel like I'd be in my head. It's like, wait, so the first time, that's when I'm supposed to be the worst, and it's not. Yeah. You can't get as good.
And now I've since had worse sets. Yeah, I've definitely had worse sets.
Do you have a specific worst set that you've ever had?
I've had some cry sets. I think I did a set at this place called the Big Legrowski, and it had to have been like February of 2021. So Comedy's coming back.
Just started.
It just started, and we are outside on the street, homeless people walking back and forth.
Perfect environment for comedy.
Yeah, it's just people are not really paying that much attention. It's raining. It's freezing cold. It's February. Hell, it even snowed that February.
Perfect.
So it was like it wasn't the best weather or anything, but it was a really rocky set. Nobody was listening to me. No one's laughing. I fumbled on words to the point where someone was like, "It's okay, you're doing great," and I was like, "Oh, pity."
Does that help or hurt?
No,
you're just like, "Oh, I'm dying out here."
It's just like, it wasn't even like my first day back. I had been coming back into comedy, so it was like hearing someone be like, "It's okay, you got this." Like it felt like pity. It felt like I wasn't doing, like I wasn't a good comedian. And so like after my set, I left and I cried.
Wow.
I like still wasn't driving at the time, so I was like walking to the bus stop crying.
Like a sad movie.
Like a sad movie. I called my mom. And I was like, "Mom, I just didn't do well. Like, this is awful. No one laughs."
Has a set ever went bad? Have you ever thought about being like, "Nah, I don't want to do comedy anymore," or is it something that you really love doing? So even at that moment, were you ever considering quitting?
Not at that moment. There was a moment where it wasn't that I wanted to quit necessarily. It was just that like I felt very overwhelmed with what was going on in comedy. Because like for me, I like came back January 2021, probably the end of January 2021, and then by March I got booked on my first paid gig.
Oh hell yeah!
And like that to me was just too fast. Like I really had only done stand-up comedy probably 4 times prior to getting booked.
Dang,
like
that's crazy.
It might have been like closer to 6. But it wasn't that much. It really wasn't. It was under 10 times before I got booked on a show, and I was just like, "Oh no!" Like I don't know how to write for a certain amount of time. I don't know how.
You're like, I've done it 6 times. They're like, we need 10 minutes. You're like,
I was like, what's 10 minutes? I don't even know. But like, it made me rise to the occasion. I didn't want to disappoint anyone. I felt like if someone's giving me this opportunity, they see something in me, I have to prove them right and make them proud. So I just wrote. Like I wrote so much in such a short amount of time because I didn't want anyone to think that all I had was one joke.
Right.
So I mean, it motivated me, but like it got to like July of 2021 where I was just like, I don't think I can keep like being this machine pushing out jokes because I don't want anyone to think that I'm a bad comedian. And,
but forcing it.
But I was forcing it hardcore. It got to the point where I was like, I think I should quit because I am forcing myself to be funny in moments where I don't feel funny. And I mean, I was drunk the day that I said I was going to quit. I had like did an open mic. I was hosting an open mic. I actually recorded myself in the bathroom quitting comedy. And I was like, I'm going to post this somewhere so everyone knows I quit comedy. But I've since watched that video. It's still on my phone.
You kept it around?
I still have it on my phone. I was drunk. I was slurring words. I was like, I should not have quit comedy that day.
Guys, it's a sketch. It's a sketch.
Yeah, I was like, it's a sketch, guys. I was just pretending. What if I quit comedy like this?
Yeah, wasn't that funny? They're like, are you okay?
Literally. I wasn't crying or anything. I was very happy. I was just like, I'm going to stop this. I told myself I was going to be an influencer. I was just going to be funny on the internet and not do stand-up anymore. Because I thought that that's how I was prior to doing stand-up, is I just loved being funny on the internet.
Yeah.
And so
I'm taking these away out. I'm going to start getting, products and just start pushing that. And then happen to be a little funny on the side.
That's exactly how I felt. Because I was just kind of getting overwhelmed. Yeah. I didn't know if I was really good at this or if people just saw me and wanted me to be good at this. If that makes sense. It's such a strange thing to say.
Right. Yeah, how do you, so one thing I was going to talk to you about was kind of like the imposter syndrome with all of it, which you kind of already touched on, is how do you battle with like knowing that you're funny? Because I feel like with a lot of comedians and a lot of the comedians I hear, it's like you don't really know you're funny until like people you respect tell you you're funny.
Yeah.
So where was your imposter syndrome, especially going through that? Because if you listen to, I'm sure you listen to a bunch of podcasts, listen to a bunch of comedians, they're always like, oh yeah, you won't get paid for like 4 or 5 years. Like stuff like
I wish that was true.
Yeah, stuff like that. And they're like, yeah, you won't be good for 10 years. And it's like, to get booked after doing it 6 times is like crazy. It's, you kind of a testament to how funny you are. But how is that imposter syndrome?
Oh, it really kicked in mostly because of how I feel alone in the scene a little bit. Like I have tons of friends and stuff, but like I just felt like it was hard for me to tell whether or not I was getting booked because I was funny or booked because of diversity. And a lot of times it felt like that. Like I was just like a lot of the opportunities, because there's not a lot of people of color, especially women of color in the Portland scene. Yeah. So I was like getting booked like crazy. And like I was saying, I was writing so that no one thought I wasn't a good comedian. And so I was like getting booked on everything. And I was just like, is this just because I'm like one of the very few, there's probably like under 10 of us black female comedians in Portland.
I've been to a bunch of open mics. I'm seeing a bunch, and there's really not a huge amount of diversity, and even the Portland scene in general.
In the Portland scene in general, but like when it comes to like black female comedians, I could probably name them all. There's really not a lot of us here, and I just felt like maybe I'm getting picked because of my race. Maybe I'm getting picked just so that they can up diversity. Like I just, and it was minimizing my own comedy the whole time I'm saying all of those things.
Were you like trying to find excuses? You're like, obviously I'm not good because of this, because of that. It can't be because I'm actually funny.
Exactly. I was trying to give myself reasons why I could beat myself up. Really. Truly, it was just me beating myself up. But I talked to one girl, and she's just like, you should just finesse that situation. People want to book you because you're a black girl in Portland. Let them book you. Let them give you money.
Be the funniest one.
Be the funniest one. Let them give you all their money. Like I was like, okay. Which now I take to, like, I understand that. I'm like, I don't mind these opportunities, whether I feel like I am the funniest comedian in the room, which is not the truth. I just, I'll take those opportunities for what they are and opportunities and use them.
Yeah, I don't see any problem with that. But yeah, I was going to ask a little bit about the diversity in Portland, because Portland in general is just super white.
Yes.
And then in the comedy scene, it's like I work at a brewery, so it's pretty much the same as the Engie comedy scene. A bunch of white dudes. How is navigating that?
It's fine for me. I mean, like, I guess I kind of grew up here. I grew up in Beaverton, actually.
I was going to ask where you're
Beaverton is whiter than Portland.
All the Nike and Intel people.
All the Nike Intel people. Like, I was definitely one of, like, the only black people in my school.
Really?
I, like, adapted. I became friends with people who were white. So I think like it made it easier to tell jokes to people who were white, because I spent so much time around them.
Right.
So it doesn't like bother me too much to be like the only black person, especially when I'm surrounded by like funny people like in the scene. So like no one makes me feel like I'm inadequate or anything weird. Yeah. Like everybody's funny, so all we do is like tell jokes around each other, and it's a fun time.
Yeah.
it's actually like a super supportive scene, to be honest.
Yeah, I was going to ask how the Portland scene is, because you hear all the other things about like LA.
Yeah, I was like, I hear about all the other scenes, and I'm just like,
New York
oh my
sounds
God,
like
people are mean.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like,
why would you do that? We were trying to just have fun.
Exactly. I'm like, wow. Like, we're actually was talking to a comedian, Susan Rice, and she's been in comedy for 40 years next year.
Oh, geez.
And pretty much started the Portland comedy scene.
Really?
Back in the 80s, because she's like, comedy was getting really big in the 80s, and Portland didn't have a scene. And she's like, me and like a couple other comics built that up. And she's like, she's really impressed with how the scene looks now. She's like, Portland scene is just nicer.
I was surprised.
Yeah.
Like, because I'm from the Midwest, and so it's like, well, if you want to do comedy, like, you go to Chicago, and then once you're in Chicago, you go to New York, LA. Yeah. But I was surprised that Portland has a pretty decent scene for, like, its size and everything like that.
Yeah. I think Portland is full of, like, I love the scene here, because I've done comedy in other states now, and I'm like, this scene is so great because it's like everybody's, like, they write really well. Everybody is so good at writing, so good at talking about their feelings. It's just, it's really funny. Like, it's really great.
We're going to take a quick pause, but I do want to talk a little bit more about, like, the scene and everything, especially with, like, the shift from, at least when I was growing up, like, the comedians who were like, my wife, like, you know, just depressing and, like, that's funny. But now it's so much more positive. And I feel like Portland, especially, and we're talking about Jaron, like, positivity within comedy is really coming back. And I noticed that in some of your comedy as well. But we're going to take a quick break. I know I just, like, was like, yeah, we can totally talk about that. But we're going to take a break and we'll come right back. We're back. Didn't really go anywhere. But, we'll get right back into it. So what are your, like, biggest inspirations? Who are your biggest inspirations in comedy or just in art in general?
In comedy, I remember as a kid, like, listening to, like, the real, what's it called? The Kings of Comedy. I would watch that with my parents a lot.
The Real Housewives?
The Real Housewives of Orange County. But I used to watch, like, Bernie Mac and D.L. Hughley and Cedric the Entertainer. Even Steve Harvey, I thought was funny back in the day.
Really?
Now he's very inspirational, I guess.
In a different way. Yeah.
He's a different guy now. Yeah. But I used to watch them a lot, and Mike Epps. And I really got a lot of inspiration, though, from television, just watching TV.
Yeah.
Because a lot of comedians get their own shows. And, like, I used to be obsessed with Everybody Loves Raymond. I don't know why. Like, I loved that show so much.
My dad as well.
Like, that and, like, Seinfeld was really funny.
Of course,
Martin Lawrence was funny.
Oh, yeah.
The Mulaney had a show for a second.
Was that good? I know it got canceled pretty quickly, and he doesn't like it.
Pretty quickly. I thought it was a little funny. I was also younger, and I thought all sitcoms were funny. Now I think I've woken up to how sitcoms cannot be funny sometimes.
Right, especially getting more into writing and more into comedy. Yeah. It kind of like ruins. Like, you can't watch bad TV anymore.
Exactly.
You're like,
I'm just like,
it's like,
this
you know, there's so many more talented people that want to be. It's like, how is this bad?
Exactly. There's some shows that I've watched, and I'm like, gosh, like, this sucks. I don't know who wrote this. But that, like, television shows really were what sparked me into comedy. And a lot of romantic comedies in particular got me into, like, writing, because I just thought that, like, making a sad situation or, like, a really emotional situation funny was really smart to me. And, like, make people laugh.
Yeah, the best ones are great because I get so frustrated when I watch something. I don't ever watch it, but when I see, like, a trailer or some shit for, like, Law and Order or something like that, where I just think nobody talks like that. And at least in the romantic comedies, there is the element of trying to be
authenticity
funny.
And, like, real conversation. Like, that's my favorite types of TV shows, is when I'm like, people have these type of conversations in real life. Like, this is real enough.
Yeah, rooted in some kind of, like, I could see that happen.
Yeah, and some reality.
Would you want to, obviously doing stand-up is probably the main priority, but writing on TV shows?
Yeah, like, I started wanting to do that, like, when I was in college, I took a lot of film classes, and I wanted to be like in front of people. I really didn't care how I got in front of people, even if that meant
give me
true
that
crime.
attention.
I just like, no. But like I wanted to be in front of people. Like I took dance. I wanted to be a dancer. Then I wanted to be an actress, and I wanted to make films and be a YouTuber. Like I just wanted to be in front of people because I knew that's where I was supposed to be, is looked at.
How did you get to that point where you're like, this is where I'm supposed to be? Is it just by trial and error until you're like, yeah, this is it?
Well, it was just where I liked being at first, because I'm one of 7 kids, and like fighting for attention
Where
was something.
Where in the order are you?
I'm number 5.
Okay.
So I was like,
one of
fighting
the
for
younger
attention
ones,
was something I always had to do. I was definitely, and my siblings are all close in age too, so we all kind of grew up together, knowing the same stuff, going to school together. Like my brother was a senior when I was a freshman. My oldest brother was a senior. Oh, wow. So yeah, I was like, we're all really tightly packed in that. He was a super senior, granted, he didn't graduate, but he was a senior nonetheless.
That's an efficient half decade there.
Yes. So we were like all together. All of us were born within like 7 years.
Dang.
So 7 kids within 7 years. It was really, really tight in there. And so like kind of trying to get attention was like what I think all of us did. Like some people, they got in trouble in school. Some people, they went and did super amazing. Like my sister, she's super good at art. Like 2 of my sisters are really good artists. And then there's like me, who I didn't really know what I was going to do. Like I didn't play sports like other siblings. I didn't like do after school programs or anything like that. I wasn't the smartest of my siblings either. So it was just, for me,
Are you the funniest sibling?
I don't even think I was the funniest sibling. Like my older brother.
Were you at least in the top 3?
Yeah, that's probably top 2.
Okay.
Like, and my older brother, I think he's funnier than me. Granted, he was the bad kid in the family. Okay. He got in trouble the most all the time. And he definitely doesn't use his humor to help him in life. But that made me the funniest. Like I think I was the most like mentally creative. Like I always wanted to do something like really random, and like I would put on like these like puppet shows with my stuffed animals and like drape a blanket over the bunk bed, and I wouldn't even write anything down. I would just start talking with these 2 stuffed animals underneath the blanket and put on a show for my parents, and they thought it was funny. Or we'd randomly sing songs together as if we were in like a quartet. I'd get all my siblings I'd get all my siblings to sing like a song like "Don't Worry, Be Happy," and I'm like, and then you guys
conducting the orchestra.
Like, you're the tenor. Use your tenor voice.
That's adorable, and it gives a pretty good insight of like how becoming a comedian like makes a lot of sense for you.
It definitely is one of the most vain things I think you could do, and it was what I did.
So, going off of some of the writing stuff, have you ever had like a huge rut? And how do you deal with like when you're not feeling funny, but you already told people? Well, judging about how you're like, I got booked, and then I just had to write jokes because I didn't want anybody to be let down. Like, if you say you're going to be on a show, I guarantee, like, it sounds like you're never going to be like, I just don't feel funny. I'm not going up.
There's times where I don't feel funny. It's just I don't like cancel.
Yeah.
Which is sometimes
just force yourself through it.
I just force myself through it, which sometimes it shows where you're forcing yourself through it. Like I even had a breakup on a day I had a show, and I still went to the show.
How was the set?
Brain, it was not the best set. My brain was not in that at all. Like I was not.
Did you talk about the breakup?
Briefly, but it sounded sad, so I pulled out. So I was just like, I'm not going to talk about this anymore. It's like, this sounds too emotional. It sounds too real. I've even had like comedy go really crazy. Like when I actually moved out of my ex's place in March, and I ended up just throwing myself like into comedy and into work. Yeah. And I did 50 sets in 1 month.
Holy shit.
So just
I think somebody said, Brent was telling me about that.
Yeah.
That you were just going crazy with it.
I was going crazy. I just didn't want to think. So I was just kind of like trying to push out as much as I could, going to open mics every single day. Really? As many as I could go to in a day.
Dang.
Getting home at like 2 a.m, waking up early to get to work.
How did you like find that time to not like die? With work and everything.
There was also a day where I did 6 sets in one day.
Yeah.
And the intention was to do 7, but I failed out.
What a slacker you are.
Yeah. But yeah, that day was like a rush. I did 1 open mic, and then I had a show. And then after that show, I had another show. And after that show, I had another show. And then after that show, I had one more show. Like, and then I had a mic again.
Frantically running across
town like a chicken with his head cut off. Like, I was freaking out. I even got to a point where I was like panicking because I was like, I'm not going to finish this show in time to make it to this other show. And I texted the host of the show, and I was like, hey, I'm running a little late. And then he was just like, get here by 10:15. I was like, what are you talking about?
It's the worst text, not like a no worries or whatever. It's just like, you will be here.
It's just like, shit, okay. Yeah. And the show that I was on started late. And I was just like, we have to get up. I even told the host of the show that I was supposed to go on before, I'm like, can we start at 9:45? Please. I was like, it's already past 9:30. Can we start in the next 15 minutes? I'm begging you. I have somewhere to be.
How did the sets go? Were you doing the same sets and then just like
I tried to do the same
tags?
Sets every single time just because I wanted to not freak myself out. And so I just did the same thing every single show.
Which one was the best? Which one went the best? Was it like the 6th one? You're like, I'm dialed in, or the first one when you're fresh?
I think that the second one went the best because the first one was just an open mic and there's probably like 5 people in the room. So I wasn't thinking too much about like how good it is. It was just an open mic. The second one, I was like, it was at Fourth Wall actually. Okay. And that room was packed that day. There's people standing up by like
and that's
the
an
entrance.
Intimate
area. It's an intimate area. And I did well in that room. That was like nice. Yeah. The next place is where I told a joke and people felt bad for me instead of laughing.
But within the same set. It's the same set. You're just like, the crowd was like, we're not feeling this one.
Yeah, they were not feeling it. And I was like, damn. And then the next one is the one I was rushing because I was like, I have to do 8 minutes. I even told the host I had to do less time. I was just like, I'm doing 8. The moment you let me, I'm getting off the stage. Because I was supposed to do 10. And so I just did the shorter amount of time. And then I literally ran out of there. And then the next one I did, it went actually really well. The 5th set went well.
Okay.
And that set was nice because it's not just comedy. I did this show called Dark Web. And so it's comedy, but it's also the comedian watches like not a YouTube video, but like almost like a Vine, like a very short clip. Yeah. And then they comment on it. And that was nice to have.
I've seen a couple different around Portland that's like, you write down like the bad thing that happened in your day or something like that. Mm-hmm. Have you done a lot of shows like that? And because that's not written at, obviously. You can't.
It's like I haven't done too many. I did this show that happens at Funhouse Lounge called Leave Your Troubles at the Door.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm talking about.
That show is so fun. I didn't have to write any material. I just had to show up and go on stage, which is awesome. And then just questions or troubles would pop up on like the TV screen, and I just have to comment on them, which was really nice. My last set of that 6-set night, that one was fine. It was 3 minutes. It was open mic.
Oh, okay.
And all I did was talk about how crazy the whole day was. I was like, this is my 6th set. I don't care about anything else. This is
what happened to the 7th?
Oh, the 7th, I was supposed to go to a bar in between 2 of the sets, but I just got too lazy. I was just like...
Well, you got too lazy. You only did 6 sets.
I know. I was just like, I can't do it. I'll have to drive across the bridge to drive back across the bridge. So I was like, I'm not going to... I'll just take it easy.
I don't blame you.
Yeah, let me take it easy.
What's a normal week look like? So are you trying to go up like 2 or 3 times, or are you... Because I know like... After hearing every like other comedian, it's like in New York or, LA, you're going up every night, 3 places, doing the whole thing.
Yeah. I try to
or
do
is it even
7.
possible in Portland?
It is possible. I try to do 7 sets a week at the minimum. Because sometimes I do
high standard.
Because there's a couple of mics where I'm just like, I have a job. Let me stop coming to this mic. Like there's mics that start at like 10 p.m. and I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to a 10 p.m. mic when I have a job at 9 in the morning. Yeah. Like I need my sleep. Or the midnight mic. Granted, that happens on a Friday and I don't work on the weekends, but I like to use my weekend for stuff. Yeah. So I try not to go to the latest mics.
Okay.
But there's times where I'm like, oh, I can do 3 mics today. There's actually a time where I did 3 mics in one day, like probably last week, if not the week before that, where I just got lucky. I got up early on one mic, got up early on the next one, and then got up early, or as soon as I got into the last one, I was like, wow, that was nice. 3 in a day. And sometimes they're the same. Sometimes I switch it up and do something different. A lot of times they're the same because the room is different. So I can get away with saying the same thing over and over because no one's heard it.
Going to all those open mics and just looking at like how much better you've gotten, everything like that, how do you, like, where are you like, this is how I'm going to get better as a comedian? Is it just by repetition going up, or is it by, studying other comedians, maybe writing more? Like where, like how are you like, this is how I'm going to become a better comedian by doing this, this, and this?
I wish I really like knew what was going to make
a lot of comedians
a better comedian. Because I can write a bunch, but sometimes like that doesn't make me feel as good as like just being around other comedians can make me feel like a better comedian. Not in the sense that I feel like I'm better than them. It's just like...
No, you're around better people. It makes you better.
Yeah, when I'm around people or when someone who I think is like so much better than me. Yeah. Like if they extend a hand to like pull me up in comedy, then I'm like, oh, okay, I'm actually pretty decent at this. Yeah. Or if like a new comic comes up to me and they're like, you're so funny. And I'm like, oh my God, I still feel like a new comic myself. Yeah. But... I'm realizing I'm getting to the next grade. Like I'm a sophomore now in this comedy game.
That's probably a pretty good feeling. Mm-hmm. How is it with, like you said, somebody come, super funny. Do you have any like fans that like will go to your show specifically just for you, stuff like that? Or especially being, I'm not trying to belittle, but like you're a relatively small comedian. So like how's like the fandom of all that? And then like,
it's weird.
Social media would probably play into that. I've had
a few times where people have showed up to my shows that follow me on social media, and then they come and say, oh, I follow you on social media, and like I showed up here. Once this girl, turns out she was not 21. She went to a bar to see me, and before she went inside the bar, she was like, hey, I'm not 21. And I was like, nobody knows. Go inside the bar. Yeah. Which I know I probably shouldn't have told her to do that.
Like, do you want me to kick you out? Like,
exactly. I was like, I'm not going to kick you out. If you want to see me do comedy, walk in the bar, sit down and watch me do comedy. Yeah. Like, literally, no one did anything to her. She just sat down at the bar. Wow. Granted, she was talking quite a bit. And I think the host approached her to tell her to be quiet.
Interesting.
But she still got to see the show, and that was nice. I've had... it's weird when guys show up to see me.
Yeah.
That's where it gets weird.
I mean, I'm only agreeing really hard because I've heard your sets.
Oh, yeah. So. There's, like, some interesting moments where guys will... Either they approach me afterwards, and I've never met them before, or they follow me, and they're like, oh, I follow you on Instagram, and I saw you're going to be in Vancouver, so I came... here, and
you're like, hope you're a big fan of comedy.
Yeah, and it's just like, okay, cool. Yeah. Once this guy, I guess I had something on my face, and he touched my face, and I was just like, I don't even know you.
I mean,
sir.
even pre-pandemic, but during pandemic, post-pandemic, don't touch me ever.
Yeah, don't touch me.
Especially like in my face.
Exactly. Like first he told me there was something on my face, and I was trying to get it, and I just didn't. So he touched me.
Did you do that? Do the whole thing?
Oh, no, God. Thank God he didn't, like, lick his finger and touch me. That was awkward.
Have you had any, like, heckling or any, like, just... I mean, you talked about being outside in February. That's
Yeah.
the weather heckling you. But anybody like disrupting the show that you had to like deal with?
Maybe like 3 times that I can think of. Once I just had this girl and she was talking a lot. She was very clearly drunk and she was talking right up against the stage. Like, it would be one thing if she was further away from the stage.
In the sense that she doesn't even know a show's going on?
She knows because she's commenting. She's just like, yeah, that happens to me. Oh my God, I agree.
Like, yeah, we all go to the grocery store. I don't need your feedback right now.
Exactly. And so I didn't say that to her. I just told her I hated her. And she did not like that. So she started walking closer to me, and I was just like, what is she doing?
She's trying to intimidate?
Well, like, she just started walking towards me, and her boyfriend grabbed her arm and pulled her back. And I was like, if she, like, trying to grab the microphone out of my hand, this is like, Will Smith slap. Like, I was just like, what is going on here? But that was fine. She ended up leaving, which is good. But I was hosting the open mic, so I really did not want her to be standing right up against the stage talking to everyone. So I was just kind of like, shut up, like, stop. And the next time I told a joke about video games, and I was like, I don't have a type. Well, I do have a type, and it's just not gamers. And this guy from the other side of the room was like, fuck you. And I was like, wow.
You're like, you're proving my point.
Literally, like, you're proving my point. And I was like, I wasn't going to sleep with you anyway, sir. Like, you just said that because I just became a little unattractive as soon as I said I hated video games. And then, I guess, lastly, people don't really, like, I've had people approach me after, and I feel like this guy wanted to heckle me, but he kept his cool until after the show, and he just started telling me how I could make a joke better.
Oh, no.
And those are my favorite people, who tell me how I can make my own jokes better.
Yeah.
And so he told me that I should, like, pretend that my glasses fell off and crawl on the ground like Velma. And my first reaction is, who's that? Which I know who Velma is.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, who's that? And he pulls out his wallet, and he has, like, a sexy picture of Velma in his wallet, like, big boobs, like,
what?
Like bent over, like, short skirt. And I was like, oh, I really don't know what that is. Like, I was like, Chinkies, I don't know what you're showing me right now. My gosh.
Oh my God. I hope that he does that to every comedian, though. You know, like, that's his plan. He's like, one of these days.
Yeah, like, when he did that to me, I'm like, gosh, I really, like, I don't think any comedian likes that when someone comes up to them and tells them how to make a joke better, unless they're a comedian.
Right.
And then you can feel the sense of, like, oh, this comedian.
It's coming from the right place.
It's coming from the right place. It's not coming from a place of, like, I know better than you. It's more coming from a suggestion place. Whereas when a non-comic person comes up and is like, you should change your joke, I'm like,
for me, you should change it for me.
I even had someone say to me, he's like, you should make more jokes about looking like a lesbian. I was like, wait, what? It's just like, I'm not. And what are you trying to say about my outfit today? Okay.
Oh, that's hilarious. But also a little upsetting.
It's just like, if you're hitting on me, I think there's a different way of doing that.
Speaking of, like, comedians, like, you know, maybe suggesting tags, everything like that. How is the scene, and how is, like, you talked a little bit about hanging out with comedians and just being around funny people makes you better, but how is the scene in Portland in the terms of, like the group of comedians that you're around, maybe?
Oh, I love the group of comedians I'm around. I actually, and not to brag, I like to throw, like, little events for the comedians who I like to be around. Like, I love karaoke.
Oh, I follow you on Instagram, so I know.
I was like, I just discovered a love for karaoke. I feel like it's just like comedy in a sense, but, like, you don't have to do well. Like people
the worse you do, the better you do.
Yeah, the worse you do, the better. Like, I love it, and I like to invite all my friends to do karaoke with me. And
I'm terrified of karaoke.
Yeah, I actually got
the last time I
did karaoke was so awesome. Because at first I thought no one was going to show up because I'm not the most good, like I'm not the best at like inviting people to things. And so I invited my close friends.
You're like afraid they're going to say no?
Well, I was afraid they weren't going to show up. And so
fear of rejection.
I invited a bunch of people, and people I didn't invite showed up, which was okay because they're also comedians.
Yeah.
But like, I was like, and Adam Posse's here. Like, I just remember singing a song, and I'm like, oh my God, like this Adam Posse's here, and Curtis Cook showed up, and like just a bunch of people who I wasn't expecting to like show up to do karaoke. I was just like, wow. Some other comedians invited other comedians, and it just so like it worked out because those rooms are expensive. So I was just like, thank God a ton of comedians came here to help me pay for this $200 karaoke room.
Does it also, like a moment like that, make you feel like, oh, I'm a part of this community? I'm a comedian.
And it also makes me feel like, because I love to talk to like newer comics, because I still like feel like a newer comic, so I feel like I can kind of understand where they are coming from, and I love inviting them to do karaoke so that they can meet some of the people who've been in it for a little bit. And I think actually it helps some people get booked, is because they're around people who book shows and they get to see them in a new light, or like, oh, you're a funny karaoke person, or I honestly feel like karaoke has gotten people booked at shows. I'm doing a good job of getting people booked based off of not even comedy, their singing voice.
Yeah, so, like you were talking about how a funny comedian reached out their hand, and that's like your way of reaching out the hand, but you're handing them a mic and being like, you are singing right now.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, you're actually going to sing. We don't care about your comedic abilities here.
Oh, great. So the last question, there's two questions I'm going to ask, then we'll finish it up. Do you have a joke that has never worked, but you love so much that you're just going to keep telling it?
It's not that it's never worked, because it's actually working really well on Instagram, and I did not expect this at all. But I have this joke about Kobe. I call it Kobe George. And the way the joke goes is... like, you know, when a guy or someone is trying to like make you feel better when you're going through a lot, and like they want to be that shoulder to cry on so that they could be like that dick to ride on at some point in the future. And so, like when like George Floyd died, a lot of guys slid in my DMs, and they're like, Imani, I know that this is hard for you. Like, I want you to know I care about you, and I've always believed BLM, Black Labias matter to me. And at first I was upset, but then like when Kobe died, I realized, I had to shoot my shot too. Like, and then sometimes I say that it didn't land, depending on whether or not people laugh at the fact that I just shot my shot with Kobe. If I say I didn't land, sometimes people don't like that. They're just like, it's too soon to talk about Kobe's death. And I'm like, is it? It's like comedians talk about people's death all the time.
That's the whole purpose.
I've noticed that men do not seem to find that joke super funny.
Really?
Like when I first started telling it, people were like silent.
Really?
Because I guess they just didn't.
I mean, you told that at Telltale. I thought that went really well.
Well at Telltale, but like there's a lot of times where I'm like, nothing. I get nothing for that. And I'm like, okay. Well, I was very bold when I posted it on Instagram. I was just like,
I can see that doing really well on Instagram.
It did really well on Instagram. It's got like 700 likes right now.
Hell yeah.
And I'm like, okay, maybe I should really work on this joke. I brought it back yesterday because I was like, you know what? It's doing well. Yeah. I might as well say it again.
Yeah, it deserves a resurgence.
It deserves a resurgence. Like that would be the one joke where I'm like, it didn't go well at first. Maybe it's starting to do better now, and I'm going to keep saying it. I don't care how people feel. Even the joke about abortion, people did not like it when I started with it. People did like it, but then there was a brief moment where maybe I was saying it too much, or I wasn't saying it the same way, but it never got the same. Even now, I feel like it still struggles to get the same laugh reaction as it did the first time.
Do you feel like you have to continuously make new jokes because like either you get tired of them, or like you go to enough open mics with similar people so they get tired of them?
I try not to think about the comedians in the room when I tell a joke, because of course they've heard
at that point,
me.
I feel like everybody's heard everybody's set.
Yeah, everybody's heard
times,
everybody's set like a billion times. So I try my best not to think about them too much, because I'm like, I'm not trying to impress you guys. So I'm trying to impress the audience. And I feel like when the audience is laughing, all the comedians are paying attention more, because they're like, oh, okay, she can make a bunch of people laugh.
Yeah.
But I do get kind of in a weird rut when I'm telling the same joke all the time.
Right.
I have the same
like
10
autopilot.
minutes. Yeah. It's like I have the same 10 minutes I'm saying at every show. I need to stop.
Right.
So
with that, so the audience for you is more important than like people you look up to in the comedy scene? I guess it's probably a give and take, where it's like, I want to make random strangers laugh, but the people who I find really funny, I want to make them laugh too.
Yeah. Like when I get a big laugh from, like, I find Adam Posse to be so funny.
Okay.
And so when I get a big laugh from him, because he has a big laugh, so whenever he laughs, I'm like, oh, okay.
You're like, I'm doing something right.
I'm doing something right. Okay, I can keep going. Even like Jaron, I think Jaron's hilarious.
So funny.
I remember I told a joke and Jaron was the only person who laughed, and I was like, it has legs. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, I know that this joke,
Yeah.
it can work because Jaron laughed at it.
Yeah. Jaron's great. And Jaron will also be on the podcast if we re-record it, because my goddamn hard drive. But yeah, this will be the last question, as all my cameras are starting to fail. Do you think that you'll make it big? And however you define that.
I do think that I have a chance of making it big. I think for me, I don't want to live in Portland for my whole life. I've lived here for like 15 years consecutive, like almost 18 years in total.
Sure.
And so I'm like, it's time to leave. I'm 25. I think it's time for me to go to a place my parents don't live at anymore and like explore. And for me, I've always wanted to go back to Texas because I was a military kid.
Oh.
So living in Texas is kind of like the dream, and living in
Like Austin, because there's a big comedy scene in
Austin
Austin
has a really
right
big comedy scene, but I don't want to live in Austin. I kind of want to live in Dallas, Texas. It's still in that hub.
Yeah.
They're like 3
I
hours
have a
away,
friend
so-
who came from Dallas,
Yeah.
and I was, for some reason, I'm like, well, Austin is like, liberal and all that stuff, and everywhere else is the worst. And they're like, no, Dallas is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Houston's cool.
I mean, last time I went to Dallas, I was a child, like a very young child, and we went and bought a turtle. And that was literally the story of, because where I'm from in Texas, we don't have aquariums or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like,
Like-
there's the pound, but people
hot
aren't
as shit.
sending their
Yeah.
turtles to the pound. Like, so we went and drove 3 hours from Killeen all the way to,
For a turtle.
for a turtle that was like this big. It wasn't even like a big turtle.
Was that a mainstay of your childhood, that turtle? Or?
Yeah, it made me want to move to Dallas. So that turtle changed my life. But I think that like I could make it big, just maybe if I might stay here for like another 2 years and then try it out somewhere else to see.
Yeah.
I don't want to get in that rut, because I've heard people tell me stories of like they did comedy in one city for a long time and then they moved somewhere else and completely stopped.
Yeah.
And I don't want that to end up happening.
I feel like it's you have your community here, and it's like, oh, you know how to navigate it, and then learning everything new, it's easy to be like, well, fuck it.
Mm-hmm.
But in your terms of like making it big, is that like having a big following, or is that just like a personal goal? Because with
Gosh,
comedians, it's like
both.
it's different. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like having a huge following kind of is what makes your money.
Yeah.
So like,
Right,
and
yeah.
like the money is what, like, if the money's good, then you can really do it full time. And like that's a goal, is to be able to like leave
Do it
my
full time.
job and be like, this is what I do now, is I'm
Yeah.
a comic. But I also want that self-fulfilling like feeling that I am super funny. Like
Yeah.
I can influence people to write, and I could be someone else's like aspiration or goal. Yeah.
Become the inspiration.
Become the inspiration.
And then, what do your parents think of your comedy?
They think I'm a liar. Which I know I have
Well, we
some-
discussed you are a little bit. Yeah.
I'm a little bit, but like they think that I lie about some of the things I say.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they gaslight me, but like sometimes I know that sometimes I've told jokes about my family, and then my parents are like, "That didn't happen like that. And I'm like, yes, it did. It happened exactly the way I'm saying it
Even
did.
if it didn't, it's now in my memory so firm that it is real to me.
Yeah, it's like, it is real to me now.
Yeah.
Like, my mom is especially, like, I don't really tell a lot of jokes about my dad, but, like, my mom, she's 100% like, wait a second, I don't remember this.
Like she's on to you. Yeah.
Yeah, she's on to me. She knows. I mean, I'm telling the truth, but she thinks she's on to me. She thinks she knows something.
This will be the very last question. I assume it's just going to be a very firm yes, but I always like to ask, do you think getting paid to do your art would help your art?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Enough so you can quit and just do comedy.
Yeah, and that's the goal. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. As the cameras are all dying, is there anything else like that you can like plug? Obviously, follow your Instagram to see where you're going to be performing, and just follow, support, all that good stuff. Anything else to plug?
No, not right now. Just the Instagram, the _ imani denae. Wait, no. Imani denae _
Well,
sorry.
there'll be a graphic.
There'll be
a
put
thing.
it there.
Yeah,
Cool.
It's fine. Thank you for doing this. It was super
Thank
fun.
you.
I very much enjoyed hanging out. I'm sure I'll see you perform very soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for tuning into this podcast. If you want more information on this artist, you can find it on our website, nøbodiesproject.com. You can follow us on Spotify as well as on our socials at the Nobodies Project on Instagram. But more importantly, we want you to be a part of this community, and you do this by submitting your artwork to us. We want the things that you're the most stoked on, maybe things that you're too nervous to show anybody else, but we want all of it. And you can do that by submitting your artwork at submit@thenobodiesproject.com. And we promise to look at every single person's artwork who is submitted, and everybody at the Nobodies Project will give you honest and heartfelt feedback. And thank you for being here and checking out the Nobodies Project.